Good morning and welcome to another episode of Marlins Monday. As always, my name is Eric Wiedeke. You can follow me on X/Twitter at Eric Wiedeke. I hope you guys all had a happy Father's Day weekend, got to do something with your dad, spend some time with him, let him know that you appreciate him. It was good for me. Got to have some dinner with my dad, catch the Marlins game. So that was a lot of fun for us. But there's a lot to talk about here for the Marlins this week. A bit of a positive week as they complete the weekend sweep over the Nationals, and we will get into that more. But first, I do just want to ask you guys to like, comment, and subscribe. Really helps out what we do on the channel here at 5 Reasons Sports Network, covering the Heat, covering the Panthers, covering the Dolphins, covering the Marlins, covering the Hurricanes, anything South Florida sports, Inter Miami, you name it, they've got it at the 5 Reasons Sports YouTube channel. So make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, we do a lot of work with Prize Picks, the best way to play daily fantasy sports. All you have to do is choose more than one player, choose a number, a prop, a stat, more or less, and you can start winning today. New users use promo code 5. That's going to be FIVE to get $50 in bonus funds on your first lineup of $5 or more. We'll likely be doing a Prize Picks prop show this evening ahead of Game 5 of the NBA Finals, so do be on the lookout for that as well. But I do want to get into this week for the Marlins. It's actually a successful week. They go 4-2, lose 2 out of 3 to the Pirates, and then they go ahead and sweep the Nationals in Washington over the weekend, and some really interesting signs here of life for this team. You go back, expanded over the course of the road trip to include the last series against the Rays, and really, they had a good case to win all 3 of those games against the Rays. This was a 5-4 road trip that I think if the ball bounces your way maybe once or twice could be a 7-2 or 8-1 road trip. So I think that 5-4 kind of belies, how well the Marlins are playing at this point in time right now. But I do want to get into the kind of nitty gritty of what happened over this last week. And I think the biggest thing right now is you're starting to see Sandy kind of come around here. I think after the start against Colorado, where he went 6 innings, allowed 2 earned runs, I think we all kind of said, well, that's, it was his first good start in a while. And you were kind of hoping that would be a launching point for Sandy. And it was. He went 6 scoreless against the Pirates, struck out 7. Over the course of his last 2 starts, he's thrown 12 innings, allowed 2 earned runs, allowed only 7 hits, only 2 walks over 12. I think that's the big thing with Sandy right now is if he can get that control back to where it was 2-3 years ago, then I think that the Marlins are in a good spot with him. And I think that Sandy will continue to look more like Sandy. We'll see tonight against a very good Phillies lineup. This isn't the Rockies and the Pirates anymore. This is going to be the Philadelphia Phillies that Sandy is facing off against. So it'll be a good barometer for him to see if he can kind of continue his play. Yuri Perez in his return, generally speaking, I think it's been pretty good. Only went 4 innings in both games. Allowed 3 innings against the Pirates. Allowed 4 runs over the course of those 3 innings. Allowed 1 run in 4 innings against the Nationals yesterday. With Yuri, I'm not particularly worried about it. I mean, he just kind of looks like a guy that's rusty right now. You can kind of see he still looks like himself, just a really not as sharp version, but everything kind of just, seems like it's there with him. So I wouldn't be too concerned about Yuri Perez going forward. I think that he's a guy that, as he continues to get more reps, more starts, more innings, you're going to see him look more and more like the guy that left off in 2023, looking like a Rookie of the Year candidate. So that's going to be a really big thing for the Marlins starters. And, because you're looking at a rotation right now after Weathers was placed on the 60-day injured list, and that was a massive blow to this rotation. You lose Max Meyer to to the IL with the hip impingement. Don't know how long he's going to be out, even though he hadn't been pitching particularly well. Cal Quantrill has been a little bit better of late still. I mean, he went, in Pittsburgh, 5 innings, 3 earned, which I think is about what you can expect out of Cal Quantrill. And so they've kind of been looking for, okay, who's going to be the 4th guy or the 5th guy, because Edward Cabrera has really been your best starter, over the last month and a half, 2 months. He looked pretty solid before he had to exit the game early on Friday night. Friday night, got stepped on covering first base, had to go out of the game, would have ended up leaving the game early anyways with the rain delay. Doesn't seem like there's anything too worrisome there with Edward Cabrera, so he seems like he'll be good for his next start, and he's been really good over the last month and a half, 2 months. So I think if you can get Sandy to pitch well, and you can get Yuri to come along and be a little bit more consistent, and Cabrera can pitch in the way that he has, then I think you've got a decent 3 in your rotation as a good starting point. Obviously, we don't know what that's going to look like post-trade deadline. I still think right now, if I had to take a guess, my lean would be that Cabrera gets traded. With Sandy, it's interesting because you're looking at, I know that I read a report recently that said that they're not going to trade Sandy at his lowest value. I think that that's absolutely the right call. I mean, if you're not getting, at least 80% of the trade packages that you were getting in April, I don't think you really listen on Sandy all that much. Although I think if he carries over the way that he has pitched in the last 2 starts, from now pretty much through the deadline, then I think you're going to be getting a lot of calls on Sandy. And I think that it could be really tempting to end up moving him ultimately. Same thing could be said for Cabrera. I mean, he's looked really consistent, but again, the guy's been so Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde his whole career that it's really hard to kind of believe that he's going to turn that corner for good one of these days, even though, I mean, if he did, he would be lights out, top of the rotation kind of guy. It's just, there's a lot of convincing that's going to have to be done there. And so that leaves the 5th spot. And I think in the 5th spot right now, you have to consider a guy like Jansen Junk. He went on Saturday, went 5 2/3 scoreless innings, allowed 2 hits, struck out 4. Throughout his tenure here at the big league level, he's pitched 22 2/3 innings. He's got a 2.78 ERA. He's only walked 2 batters in 22 1/3. He's got a 10-to-1 strikeout to walk ratio. His FIP is 157. And for those that don't know, FIP is essentially, what is your ERA on the 3 true outcomes? Strikeouts, walks, homers. And so it just kind of eliminates some of the fielding aspect of it. So, Jansen Junk is really looked pretty good for the Marlins since coming up. I wouldn't be surprised to see him get that 5th spot in the rotation. I wouldn't mind it. I think he's earned that opportunity time and again with his outings out of the bullpen. He's a guy that's shown you he went 5 2/3 out of the bullpen on Saturday. The Marlins would love to get 5 2/3 out of their starters of late, the way things have been going. They've taxed their bullpen all season long. So I think Jansen Junk is a guy that, ultimately should get that spot in the 5th spot next time the open spot in the rotation comes around. And then, if he's pitching well and Max Meyer is ready to come back, maybe that's your way of kind of eschewing him into the bullpen. Because I think that that's something that's going to potentially have to happen. The other thing that I wanted to talk about so far was, we're 69, almost 70 games into the season here for the Marlins, 28 41. Yes, we know playoffs is not on the table, barring some miracle. Yes, we know the team isn't going to, finish with a 500 record, most likely. But I do think that, we're getting to a point now where about 2 months into the season, you can kind of point out, okay, these have been your breakout guys. And not a lot of pitchers on this list because quite frankly, there hasn't been a lot of really positive stuff coming from your starters. There's been some really solid bullpen guys. I think that could qualify there. Maybe a Cade Gibson gets an honorable mention, or Ronnie Enriquez, although he struggled of late. You know, but really, I want to keep it limited to your position players because I think that's where you've had the most growth. That's where we've had the opportunity for guys to really kind of break out. And the first guy that I want to point out is, of course, Dane Myers. 44 games this year, hitting 333. He's got an 857 OPS, 4 homers, 18 runs batted in, 8 stolen bases. I mean, again, I'm going to continue this. I'm going to continue this kind of comp for him. I see a lot of Torrey Hunter. I see a lot of a guy that can be a 2020, 2020, 25, 25 guy, hit 280, 300, and really kind of anchor your lineup for you in a way that few guys at that position can. And I think Dane Myers is absolutely a breakout star here in 2025. Even now, you look at his career numbers, 110 games, a 296 average, a 772 OPS. The defense has been what it's been pretty much his whole career. And, it's really been about staying healthy and getting those consistent ABs. He started 12 games in a row now at center field. I think it's fair to say that he's become your starting center fielder, and I don't think anything should change there. Teams are definitely going to come calling, as they should, I wouldn't blame them. I would expect them to. But if I'm the Marlins, I'm rebutting those offers unless I'm getting some sort of Godfather package for Dane Myers right now. And I know that, frankly sounds ridiculous to a lot of people listening, talking about a guy that's played 110 games in his career, but you watch the guy play and there's not a lot that looks like a fluke about this with Dane. The swing is really good. The swing decisions could be better at times. Does love that high fastball. But there's not a ton of whiff in his game, and he hits the ball hard. He hustles. He plays the right way. He's a menace on the bases. He's just a really, really fun player. And I think that he's absolutely probably your biggest breakout star of 2025 is Dane Myers. The second guy is going to be a guy that, quite frankly, I'm not sure. Well, he was a Rule 5 guy, so I think a lot of people maybe had him on the roster out of camp because of that. But Liam Hicks, for a guy that's never played above Double-A, he's played 44 games, 280 average, 358 on base, and 816 OPS, 4 homers, 25 runs batted in, leading NL rookies in RBI, second amongst NL rookies in on base percentage. The guy hits, and it's really an approach thing with Liam. He's got such an elite feel for the strike zone. He rarely strikes out. He's got a fantastic eye at the plate. He's never trying to do too much with it. And he's got a little bit more pop than I think a lot of people anticipated. People kind of expected him to be, a guy that might hit you 6 to 8 homers over the course of 162. I think maybe, 12 to 15 for Liam is probably about where he'll fall in line. And if he's giving you 12 to 15 homers and he's hitting, 285, 280, and getting on base at the clip that he is, I think he's a really, really valuable addition to just about any lineup. I think it's similar to Dane. Teams are going to be calling on Hicks. I think the Marlins maybe a little bit more open to listening there, just because when you consider the cost that it took to acquire him, he was kind of found money as a Rule 5 draft pick. And I don't know if they have a long-term position for him, whether that be catcher or first base. So I think that there's more questions with Hicks moving forward than maybe a guy like Dane, even though he is a little bit younger. But Hicks, absolutely one of your breakout stars of the season. Augustin Ramirez, he's fallen off a little bit, but we have to remember what we're looking at here. We're looking at a guy that's 23 years old, was called up in the middle of April, and he's already leading your team in homers. He's got a 755 OPS, and he's figuring it out at the major league level. He rarely looks overmatched. Yes, does he swing out of his shoes? Absolutely. He's a young player. it's going to happen. I'm confident that he's a guy that's going to eventually get it right, because when you look at what he offers you at the plate, um, there is still a lot of maturity in his approach, just from an eye standpoint. He rarely chases really bad pitches. It's just he's just a guy that gets maybe a little bit too pull happy at the plate, because he's got that violent swing and he's always out in front on everything. But I think that that's something that he'll kind of tamp down on as he gets older, as he matures at the plate as a player. So I think right now you've seen a guy that's got a really, really good foundation to work with as a hitter. And as a catcher, I mean, it's going to be difficult. I don't know if he sticks at catcher long term. I think he's got a good arm, but I don't know if he's like the fundamentals of the position, getting up out of your stance for a stolen base. The pop time is kind of slow. He's got that really long kind of over the top throwing motion that doesn't really lend itself to throwing out base runners for a catcher. He doesn't block pitches particularly well. Again, he's getting the reps right now, and he's going to improve at it. It's just a question of if he's going to improve enough to viably be a starting catcher at this level. But I think you see kind of similarities to, a guy like Salvador Perez as a hitter with Agustin Ramirez. And, if you're getting Salvador Perez, I think you sign up for that 10 times out of 10 and figure out, where you play him after the fact. And then the last guy is going to be Kyle Stowers. He's kind of going through it right now, but Kyle Stowers through this season, 276 hitter, 807 OPS, 10 homers, 33 runs batted in over the course of 65 games. I mean, if you told me Kyle Stowers was going to hit 275, 280, and give you 20 to 25 homers this season, I would have been shocked. And that's the pace that he's playing at right now. Is he going to continue? I don't know. He's kind of going through a swoon here. He was hitting 300. He was hitting between 300 and 320 for, probably the first 2.5 months of the season through about mid-May. And he's really kind of fallen off here over the last month or so. Although I do think that, he had a pretty good series in Washington, went 3 for 8, drew a walk. So I think that there's opportunity for him to kind of turn it back around. And if he does, then, look out. I think that the Marlins right now, you've got 4 guys that could feasibly be. I don't know if they will be. I don't know, what they see coming up behind those guys in the minors. I don't know what they see in terms of their long-term plan on a lot of these guys, but I think you have 4 guys that you could reasonably say, it wouldn't be ridiculous if they're part of the long-term plan in the lineup. And they could be good major leaguers at this next level. So I think, and that's not even counting guys like Edwards, who's been disappointing this year, but going back to about mid-May, hitting 330 with a 772 OPS, he's played much better defense at second base. I think that that's something to watch. And then Connor Norby, as much as he's struggling this season, I still think that there's potential there. He played well in 2024. I'm hard pressed to believe that he's just going to continue to slump. So if those guys come through, then you're talking about maybe 5 to 6 guys in your lineup next season that you feel pretty comfortable with. And then it's really about, number one, I think finding that guy that can kind of tie it all together and be your legit middle of the order bat. I mean, obviously, depending on some of the progression that you get from these guys and if they continue to play well. Agustin Ramirez, I think at the very, in his very best outcome could be that, but I think it's probably not reasonable to assume that. So I think that you're still looking for a everyday first baseman. I think you're still looking for a defensive everyday catcher. Maybe a guy like Joe Mack comes up and kind of proves himself there. I'm sure at some point in the season, at the first base spot, we're going to see Davison De Los Santos get his opportunity to kind of show that he can be that down the stretch. So I think that there's a lot of positive signs for the Marlins here going forward. And right now it's just about identifying guys that are going to be part of your core in 2026 and beyond. And I think that they've got at least 4 guys right now in terms of position players that you feel pretty comfortable with doing that. Just looking forward here, it's going to be a 4-game set versus the Phillies. Then it's going to be 3 against the Mets. Marlins 7 games upcoming here against the NL East, and it's going to be it's going to be a bit of a gauntlet. Marlins this year are 9-8 against the NL East to this point. Granted, 5 of those wins did come against the Nationals, 5-1 against the Nationals, 4-7 against everyone else in the NL East to this point. So take that, how you will. But it is interesting to note over 500 against the divisional opponents, 19-33 against everyone else. It'll be interesting to see if that trend continues. And I will be watching along for it. I will see you guys next week. Hopefully you'll be watching along as well on the next edition of Marlins Monday. My name was Eric Wiedeke. Thank you guys so much for watching. We will see you next time. Do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe, as it does help grow what we do here on the channel. I will see you guys next time. Thanks a bunch and have a great day. Bye-bye.